You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello, and yes, you are listening to Orange County's longest running business talk show, and I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have a good show for you today. Why do you ask? Because Meg Treat is our guest. She is the CEO of Treat Public Relations. Meg, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Rick. Looking forward to it. Really proud to be about a part of the Orange County business community. And so it's really special to be on with you today.
Well, let's get right into it. Talk to us. I love it when we have an entrepreneur and founder on the show. So take us back in time and talk to us about the motivation, inspiration you had to start Treat Public Relations.
Absolutely. So Treat Public Relations is the endurance event industry's premier PR partner. And it was born out of my desire to combine my passion for endurance sports that I picked up after college with my profession of public relations, which I studied and worked in for a number of years before starting my business. I was at boutique agencies all across the country. I was in-house at big corporations working on their PR and media relations. And I kept thinking, man, wouldn't it be great if I could be working on clients that I could be pitching to the magazines and publications that I care about, like Runner's World and Outside Magazine. And Treat Public Relations was a dream. I was in graduate school. I was looking for a way to continue working while I was studying. And I thought, this is my opportunity to go out on my own. Maybe I can foray, a path into this space of running that I'm so passionate about as a consumer and would love to be as a professional too. Within the first week, I had signed my first client, the local marathon. And now, nearly 10 years later, we're now the premier PR agency that works with some of the largest running events in the United States all across the country.
So I love it when an entrepreneur and a founder has a niche, and you clearly have a niche, Meg. And so we're going to talk about the business and all that in a minute, but I got to back up. What sparked your interest in endurance running? And you said after college. What did you do it in high school? You got to tell us where did this come from?
No, it was totally unexpected. I used to be the kid that was the last coming in during the mile in PE. I did the presidential fitness test every year because I knew I would have to get out on the track. And running was just not something that I did. I was a dancer. I was on the swim team. But I was the person who said, I'm not a runner. I don't do that. I run if something's chasing me. After college, I met my now husband, who's a big runner, and I wanted to find a way for us to work out together. So I decided to download a Couch to 5K app. I ran my first race. And of course, that's now this industry that we serve, right? These folks who organize running events. And showing up to a starting line and crossing a finish line just changed everything for me. Going from someone who really felt that I was never going to be able to do something to accomplishing that goal and seeing that actually it was all in my head. I could be a runner if I wanted to. I could be anything if I wanted to. And so running and participating in races showed me that, taught me that, and I think set me up for the path that I'm on today. And now I can't imagine my life without running. Running isn't necessarily exactly the same for me as it was when I first started doing it, but it's continued to be an anchor point in my life. It's continued to be a through line that's there for me to provide me with support and that reminder of how anything is possible if you're willing to sit down and do the training and get yourself to the start line thoughtfully.
What a teachable moment there. See, you never know on these programs what you might pick up from the guests. I told you at the beginning of the show this was going to be a good one, and Meg, you've already hit it out of the park, and we're just in the first question. So what have you, I always like to find out from founders of companies, did you have any pivots? Like, what did you learn it's great that you got your first client so quickly, but did you have any pivots? Have you done any pivots over the time to the business?
I have. I've had a lot of pivots. When I first started the business, I was just interested in working with anybody who was in the running space, brands, services for athletes like coaches and trainers and gyms and things like that. And of course, the events themselves, these marathons, triathlons, 5Ks that folks were showing up to, be the culmination of their work and their training. And while I had fun working on brands, the events just were my superpower. I started to notice that I was getting more meaningful results for those clients, that I was having more fun showing up to them, that they were filling my cup. There's really nothing better about our job than the day that we actually get to be there at the race and watch people come across the finish line. Nothing will remind you about the power of the human spirit like being at the finish line of a race. And I found that to be the most energizing. So I did move from, rather than representing products, services for athletes, just focusing on events, which was an early pivot. Then, just like a lot of business owners, I think that there's always that kind of nagging little question in the back of your mind when you're an entrepreneur of, would it be better if I went back to traditional work? Would it be better if I just took a job somewhere? It certainly would be easier in some respects in terms of a paycheck coming in. A lot of these responsibilities wouldn't be on me. I could focus on just doing my job. And for me, I had an opportunity come up for an endurance sports brand, an in-house opportunity to represent them, where I put Treat PR on hiatus a little bit. I pick up projects here and there, moonlighting, but I did focus my attention back on that job, just in a moment of feeling like that was a better place to put my energy. I would make my way back to the business eventually through going back to traditional work. That was the last big pivot. I lost my job due to COVID. And I went home and filed for unemployment and refiled for my LLC in about the span of 5 minutes from each other. And just got right back to work. I really took it as the universe saying, hey, no secure job is really secure. You should go back to doing what you're really passionate about and what you knew you were completely aligned doing with Treat PR. And since then, business has been flourishing, and it was the perfect realignment back to the path, even if it wasn't the straightest path to get there.
That is such a fantastic story. I'm sure a lot of founders are probably identifying with that tension of, well, maybe I should just go back and get a job for all the reasons that you just mentioned. But you actually scratched that itch, and then you realized it's a mirage. The permanency of a paycheck, it can go away overnight, can't it? So
true. And I think what's interesting is that, it's okay to do that. I think for a moment I thought, oh, this is going to be embarrassing. People are going to realize that I made a mistake, that I wanted to be at my business all along. You get caught up in those ideas of how it might look. And it doesn't always look the same for each entrepreneur, and that's okay.
So let's talk about Treat PR today. Again, remind us in maybe a little more detail, who do you serve and what are you doing for them? And then within that niche, who have you found who are the type of clients that really get the maximum ROI from working with your firm?
Yes. So we have a very distinct client, someone who either puts on one annual keystone running, triathlon, or cycling event every year, or an organization that throughout the calendar year puts on multiple types of endurance events on their calendar. Some folks have a big event, again, that they're leading up to once a year. It's the big community event. Others have turned it into more of a portfolio business where they own many, or they work for lots of different clients who hire them to put on these races. But they're organizing a mass participation sporting event. For us, what ends up making the most sense, although we do have something for everybody, from the 5K organizer who has 150 people show up at their race to somebody who puts on a 15,000 person marathon every year. Where we find that folks start to get the most value out of our most popular packages, where we really are engaging with them in the way that a traditional PR agency would, is around the 5,000 person mark for their participants. They, are someone who really highlights the experience for their athletes that wants to make it something that goes beyond just the athletic feat, but is something they'll remember forever and be, a prized moment in their life. And somebody who really sees themselves as a part of their community, that they use their race to give back, either by driving economic impact, giving to local charities, or engaging with local groups that positively impact the community.
So I understand that. I'm wondering who stands behind those organizations. You mentioned nonprofit. Are you saying there are businesses that professionally organize these events?
Yes, there sure are.
Okay.
We have a few different models. If somebody's putting on one annual event, and that's their focus each year, some are nonprofits and some are for-profit businesses. We don't necessarily discriminate in terms of who we work with for clients. We're happy to work with for-profit and nonprofit groups who put on these events. In fact, there's actually been recent studies that show that for-profit races are actually able to give more back to local charities because they run themselves like a business and are able to generate more excess funds to give back. But then in addition, there are organizations who this is what they professionally do many times a year. We have a couple of clients who put on as many as 30 events every year, ranging from all distances, all types of sports, who are turning over events either just in their local area or all across the country.
So where are your clients? We're here in Southern California. How big across the country do you go with your firm?
Coast to coast and north to south. We have clients in about 15 states and everywhere from Key West, Florida to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, to Biloxi, Mississippi, here in Southern California, San Diego, Los Angeles, all the way up to Portland, Oregon. We have tons of clients here, there, and everywhere. I think what's lucky about public relations is most of what we're working on for our clients can be done virtually. We do have packages where we come to your race on the day and manage all the media that show up on site and make sure that your best foot gets put forward with those media on the day of. But for the most part, 99% of our work is done virtually and can be done from anywhere.
Okay. Is this niche growing? Are you in an industry that there are more races popping up, more people that want to do this greater? I mean, it's always nice as an entrepreneur if you're in an expanding market. Is that what's happening for the race industry?
Definitely. The running industry has been growing since returning after COVID. Certainly our industry, like all events, be it concerts or anything else, was impacted greatly by COVID. A lot of folks switched to virtual racing, which, filled that hole briefly.
Right.
But coming back from COVID, it did take a number of years to see major recovery happen in terms of participation numbers. But most of our clients are back to serving as many participants as they did before COVID and are starting to sell out and max out their events once again. We are seeing a huge interest from Gen Z in running. Lots of folks that if you're on TikTok and are in the running community, you might have noticed the increase in folks who are having their quarter life crisis and deciding to run a marathon for fun, or even the rise of the realistic runner, as they're calling it, which I've been a realistic runner this whole time, but I'm glad there's finally a word for it, for folks who maybe aren't at the peak of athletic performance, but enjoy participating at every pace. There's more inclusivity around that throughout our industry. With running clubs back on the rise and participation in that, lots of people finding their partners at run clubs and using that as a space for meeting friends and dating. We certainly are seeing a big boom in the running industry, and we expect it to continue in years to come.
And from your perspective, how robust is the media that surrounds that industry?
Yeah. Our national consumer media around running has certainly shrunk. I think like a lot of national media, magazines and things like that, we certainly have less running publications than we used to have. But I think that a common misconception about what we do, of course, we are reaching out to Runner's World, we are reaching out to Outside Magazine about your event, is that we really become an anchor point and a boutique agency for you in your local area. You're the most newsworthy where your event is happening.
Right.
And so it really has to do with what your local media market looks like, which whenever we're vetting a potential new client, we like to make sure that there is a stronghold of local media that we'll be able to partner with and create a relationship with. But for us, the majority of the media hits that we're earning for you are locally based or regionally based, with those national publications being the cherry on top.
Yeah, and I think everything starts at home. So having the local media paying attention drives the attendance and awareness as well. I'm learning so much, Meg. Thank you for sharing a bit of what you know about your expertise. Let's change the direction a little bit and talk about you as a early stage founder and as you're scaling your company. Were there ever moments where you sort of felt isolated or alone on this journey?
Sure. I mean, both when I started the business and then reinvigorating the business after COVID, I think there was definitely feelings of isolation in the beginning years. And only recently did I start to build out my team rather than working as a solopreneur, which I did for the majority of the time that I've had this business. In the beginning, the isolation was a little bit different. It wasn't the isolation of COVID, of being at home alone and not really being out in the world during that time. But instead, it was more of the isolation that comes from feeling othered sometimes about the way that people view entrepreneurship. I think that some people thought it was a little hobby, that I wasn't really trying to turn into a business. I had friends, even people who I thought were my friends, who would say stuff like, "Isn't it nice that your husband can afford to let you have your business?" Whatever that means. There were times that I felt like people didn't take me seriously in the way that I was approaching the business and the community around me, and that felt isolating. Luckily, I did have great partnership. My husband is a great supporter of the business, although I told him I was starting this business, let's be clear. But, my parents are entrepreneurs too. I think I'm a fourth generation entrepreneur. And so I had that support system from my family, which was great. But then during COVID, oh my goodness, that was a whole different type of isolation. Being a solopreneur in the age of social distancing was difficult, and trying to build new client relationships, trying to stay connected to the local business community, that presented its own difficulties with isolation.
The journey of an entrepreneur is an interesting one. And if you've never been on that path, it's hard to fully appreciate the journey that you're on. But if you've been on it, probably, Meg, as you're talking, other entrepreneurs going, yeah, I understand it. Let's talk about a piece of business advice. Has someone given you some insight or advice that you have found valuable that you could pay it forward with our audience today?
Totally. I have two.
Okay.
I actually had a landlady previously. I lived in her granny flat when I was living in Hawaii when I first met my husband. And she was an entrepreneur. She was a super successful consultant, real boss lady, amazing. She was always up at 4 a.m. talking to her high-powered clients that were out on the East Coast. And we were, so far behind in the time zone shift, but she didn't care. She was getting up to talk to those high-value clients and make it all happen. She shared with me that she thought that her success lied in the fact that she found a client base that was very narrow but very deep. Lots of people within that industry to serve, but extremely specific in the type of client that she worked on. I wasn't really imagining starting my own business at that time when she told me, but of course it stuck with me. And when I started a very niche company, that certainly came forward as something that sparked the belief that I could make this happen. So I think thinking about the fact that it's okay that not everybody is your customer, and thinking about doing one thing and doing it really well, or serving one type of client and serving them extremely well, is great advice.
Mm-hmm.
The other is from a book that I read from this gal, Rachel Rogers. She's an entrepreneur and a business coach who wrote a great book called We Should All Be Millionaires, which I would highly recommend to any entrepreneur, especially solopreneurs. And I actually changed the whole structure of my business and how I was delivering services based on advice that Rachel offered in her book, which came down to the idea that when you're a solopreneur, you have to find ways to make your service replicable. Making a custom project for every single client when it's just you is so difficult, number one, to execute well, but it's also nearly impossible to make profitable. So finding any way that you can to make your service business scalable and replicable is so important in the early days to get you to a place where you are able to grow your team, see that profitability, and have the opportunity to take up more space in your industry.
Wow, those are home run. Two good pieces of advice. Thank you, Meg, for sharing that with the audience. From a technological perspective, what's your view of AI and how do you see it impacting your firm, your industry, your clients?
Yeah, I get asked about AI a lot. I think because so much of what we talk about, I think right now in AI is about it being a generator, it being a writer, right? And for an industry like public relations, where writing is our superpower, it's the foundation of all that we do. It can be troubling to be thinking about how AI might be impacting that. I taught public relations at the collegiate level for a couple of years, and certainly AI was a big discussion in my class. But I kind of describe it like a calculator. You know how back in school you have to show your work and not use a calculator on some math test to prove that you didn't just have the answer pop up from the calculator. You had to show that you actually knew the logic that it took to get to the answer. For me, that's how it feels with using AI for writing. It's one thing if you're a super seasoned professional, you're using it to get inspiration, you're using it to get a starting place. It's another thing to be a young professional who's telling AI to write a press release and hitting go and never actually learning the process and being able to spot what good writing is versus what AI is telling you great writing is. So we see it as a tool for things like media monitoring. AI helps us spot when our clients are mentioned in the news. It helps us search for great community partners, great journalists that we want to work with who we can pitch stories to. But for us as a company, we've decided that for traditional PR documents, that it's supposed to be our superpower to know how to write them and write them strategically and write them well. We're not going to use it. We might use it to get some inspiring headlines. We might use it for a task that we don't know what to do, or we're feeling stuck on getting started with how to phrase up an email that we're going to send to a potential client, what have you. Before the building blocks of our toolbox, we've decided that we're not interested in using it for those types of purposes. That said, again, I think that there are opportunities for it to really help us in creativity, in professional development, in learning new skills. But for us as writers, I think that, we're not as curious about using it for generation, just because we know that that's what we enjoy doing. And that's the muscle that we've been growing and developing all these years in our work.
Interesting. I think a lot of people would think of AI to do what you say you've chosen not to do because it's your expertise and is, I think, your term superpower. And so that is always insightful for me to get from the guests here on the show, their view and their how they see AI impacting their business. I also think as you continue to put processes into place, there's probably value in some AI technology, especially in the scanning of the media, et cetera, that you can really benefit from. So
Totally.
let's talk about your future and Treat PR. What's your vision? Share with us, Meg, where you're taking your firm.
Yeah, when I look ahead for Treat PR, I see a few things. I certainly see our team continuing to grow. Me, Danny, and Anna have a great time working together and kind of enjoying these, what we call the good old days of Treat PR. We know that that's what they are right now and that there's a bigger future ahead of us. But seeing our team grow is certainly a part of that, which means that we'll be serving more events, larger events in more places. I think that we're really interested in finding extra creative ways to help our clients build relationships, because at the end of the day, we have press releases, we have pitches, we have all these deliverables that are in the scope of work that are our toolbox for making a communication strategy come to life. But they're all in service of creating better relationships for our clients that help them do what they do, either bigger, better, more efficiently. We're trying to use communication and relationship building to help get bridges built for them, to get obstacles out of their way so that they can bring more people to the starting line and help them learn what I learned, right? That anything is possible when you set your mind to it and you create a plan. And so anything that we can do to streamline that process and make it easier to welcome more people to the sport, that's where I see us going, is really thinking creatively about how we can expand on doing that and how we can keep renewing our dedication to that mission.
Boy, your enthusiasm for what you're doing comes through. You can almost feel it, even though we're here virtually. And I really want to mention that to you to let you know that I interview about 100 people a year, and I'm impressed with the level of positive energy that I'm getting from you and about your business and your clients. It's an honor to have you on the show. If someone, Meg, would like to reach out to you on LinkedIn or learn more about Treat PR, how do they do that?
Yes, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'm always excited to connect with other business owners, especially those here in the Orange County community. You can find me using my name as it's displayed here, Meg Treat, APR. You're also welcome to reach out to us on our website. The form is set up for race directors to contact us, but you're certainly welcome to drop me a note there, and I'd be happy to reply to you. In the new year, for young professionals who are interested in, either doing informational interviews or learning more about the business of PR, I'm setting up some new office hours where folks can drop in and ask their questions about resumes, about interviewing, and what it's like to work in the field of PR. So that's something coming up that folks can reach out about. And then, of course, if you'd like to go for a run, give me a ring. I'd be happy to go out for a trot with you, no matter your pace, and help show you the power of running.
Orange County has a lot of interesting places to run, doesn't it?
It sure does, from the beaches to the mountains and everything in between. We've got a little bit of everything, which is so fortunate. It's a beautiful place to be on the run.
And the climate allows you to run pretty much 365, right? I mean, it's never too cold, never too hot to run. So
it's true. And we have great races here. It's also easy to hop to John Wayne and go to any race you can think of. I've got all my medals up behind me.
I see that. Okay.
But we're very fortunate, and it's certainly easy to stay dedicated to the path in the community that we're in.
Well, thank you for giving us some time today. I was excited to have you on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I said at the top of the show it was going to be a good one. And Meg, you made it great. Thank you for your time today.
I'm thrilled. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And thank you to the audience who's listening to us live on our stream or participating on the podcast later on. However you're consuming our show, we appreciate you participating. If you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur like Meg, or a nonprofit leader, and you'd like to share your story with our audience, it's really easy. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. If we're not connected, make a connection request. Let me know of your interest. Between Haley, our producer, and myself, we'll be happy to get you ready to be on a guest in the future. If we're already connected, just send me a message in LinkedIn, and Haley and I will follow up. Meg's episode joins our catalog of over 1,500 shows that we've done over the years, and we'd love to have you as an Orange County entrepreneur be a guest in the future. And until we all have a chance to be together again, I hope all of your business decisions will move your organization in a positive direction.